Bach would have been a Swiftie, probably. Never getting Bach together. Nice. So the other day I saw an interesting article on Ultimate Guitar titled, "What Would Bach Think of Modern Music? He'd Be Horrified," from Yngwie Malmsteen. As we know, Yngwie Malmsteen is a neoclassical metal shredder, composer, really good at improvising, that sort of thing, using these classical aspects. But more so, Yngwie is very inspired by the Baroque era, which is specifically the Bach era. A few other composers that were big back in the day, but Bach was the biggest dude of that era. Now, being that Yngwie is pretty much a strict Baroque composer, there comes the term the common practice period. So the common practice period is basically a broad terminology between the 1600s and the early 1900s of utilizing rules in music theory, mostly with Western harmony, things like dissonance and creating tension and resolution, using sort of rules that we are kind of known for and used to when we are learning about music theory. Now, after the 1900s, we kind of sort of delved away from this. That's when the atonal music theory started coming up and new theories were kind of being brought into light, and more dissonance and less worry about being in sort of harmony with one another mattered. So basically the short article just kind of references a video interview of Yngwie and somebody asking him what he would think Bach would think if we transported him into the future and he heard this kind of music. And he basically described that kind of music from Bach's era up until now being described as a cathedral versus an outhouse.
Because if you listen to the works of Bach, it's like comparing a cathedral with an outhouse. You know?
To me, Bach is the closest thing to God, Malmsteen added. When I hear Bach, it's the most amazing music ever. Vivaldi, of course, many other composers. So originally his take is saying that you can't really compare Bach's music to now because there's so many things that are different, and just in general that time was very more prestige and very more rule following, and things sounded correct in sort of a sense of back in the day. But we have evolved into this modern time where we can use those rules if we want to, but we can also break those rules. We can use other forms other than Western harmony. As long as we know the rules and break them, that's what we want to be able to do. Back then, the music theory was best, and now the music theory ain't that good. I don't agree with this take, but we're going to keep going and seeing what else he says. Would J.S. Bach play neoclassical guitar music if he was alive today? And Yngwie said, "I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm just humbly trying to utilize what I can get from these classical composers." I think what the interviewer was trying to say was like, okay, well, Bach might not like the modern music that we have today because it's so vastly different, but Yngwie, you are the Bach dude. Like, we look at you when it comes to inspiration of Bach, especially in metal, being that your guitars are now distorted and you're mostly shredding and stuff like that. Would Bach play that stuff? Would he enjoy that stuff? And he kind of gave like a I don't know kind of answer. It's a little strange to say that, you know, he wouldn't like the music now, but he also, I don't know if he'll like my music or not. You know, it's kind of like, it's a little bit interesting and strange to say. But nonetheless, I do agree that what he's trying to do is good, where he's trying to take the inspiration from multiple other composers, which is always good. And a lot of people in the comments had some colorful things to say. The first comment says, well, yeah, that's obvious. You bring anyone from the 1700s till present day, they would absolutely shit themselves and have an aneurysm over everything that is the norm today. And then somebody said Bach would have been a Swiftie, probably. Never getting Bach together. Nice. Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, Brahms, Haydn, and Handel were at an age where it was impossible to even imagine what difference would be present. So Malmsteen may be correct in the notion of musical culture shock, but he also just plays 6-string extreme volumes, yada yada yada. In all honesty, even Mozart would be more than thrilled and excited with all that we have learned about music and production in the last 200 years. And I think that that comment is something to really look at and discuss real quick, because depending on the personality of the composer that you are showing this modern music to, they might actually like it and be intrigued by it. Someone like Mozart, known for just having a very abrupt and strange and humorous sort of personality versus some of the other ones that are a little bit more stuck up and snobby, I think that Mozart would actually really be interested and really like the stuff that he would hear. But someone like Bach, yeah, maybe he wouldn't like it as much. But also factor in this too. It's not like we're just bringing them and we're just showing them music. Like, we'd have to show them modern technology. We'd have to talk to them about the history of the world, the giant world events that shaped what the world is today. And I think through that, they're normal humans and they would kind of understand, yeah, well, it's been a few hundred years. So we kind of understand the fact that we're not still using the same sort of music theory aspects that we used in the 1700s. More so, the last thing that Yngwie talked about was very important, and I actually do agree with the take that he said. He says, I think that no matter what instrument you play, Malmsteen explained, you need to have the dedication to theory and harmony, and need to know the framework, the alphabet, the language of music. You need to know that. So Yngwie obviously is starting to describe the fact that, okay, if you don't have your basics down, like the circle of fifths, if you don't know your scales and your arpeggios and diatonic stuff and harmonic minor and dominant seven and all those things, the basics, it's really going to be hard for you to progress in your compositional aspects. But he also did touch up on the improvisational aspects in seeing if knowing music theory will hinder or help your playing. And he said, but then I think you should just improvise. It doesn't matter what you play. A lot of people go, I could play that song, but that's not really being a complete musician. You need to be able to improvise, and in order to improvise correctly, you need to know the theory. And I totally agree with this. If you're being stuck in those same pentatonic boxes, just learning the shapes is fine, but you really need to understand why you're learning these shapes, what those shapes actually mean, where they go in specific chords and chord progressions, how to adapt to modulation, how to adapt to altered chords, and all that good stuff. There's a lot of things with music theory and improvisation that go hand in hand, and I think that in general, the biggest gaping hole that I think Yngwie is pointing out is that metal musicians tend to not want to learn theory because it's a lot of extra brain power and it's not a lot of playing, and we want to play. That's what we want to do. But taking a step back and understanding the music theory aspects of music is going to drastically help your composition, songwriting, your improvising, all that good stuff. And I think Yngwie is pointing out a really big problem in the metal community, which, by the way, you should definitely check out my weekly music theory group classes. It goes with my music theory course, and it would be really fun to have you. So link in the description for that if you need more help with that. In general, I think it's just very important for us to start understanding that music theory should go with pretty much every single genre of music, and metal is not exempt from that. With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video.